Our scripture reading this evening is from Luke chapter 6. We begin at verse 27. Jesus said, "But I say to you that listen, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to anyone who begs from you, and if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. Do to others as you would have them do to you." The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Well, our theme through this Wednesday series in Lent is encouraging people. And so if you've been here other weeks, you've heard stories from other pastors of different people in their lives who have had a significant impact on their lives of faith. And so as I was considering just who would I lift up? There have been a lot of encouraging people in my life. But the person who bubbled up as I thought and prayed about this takes me back to the summer of 1997. And so a lot of our stories over the past few weeks have either been from a family member or a teacher, a friend throughout the years, but my story has a narrower window, I think, just the 3 months. June, July, and August, in the summer of 1997. So in the summer of 1997, what I was doing was journeying through college and had gotten to the point where I had a summer internship at JCPenney at Brookdale. So whenever I drive past where Brookdale used to be, I think of that summer. My internship was in the men's and young men's department of the Brookdale store, and I had all sorts of projects to do. And in the course of this remembrance, I found a box of college notes that for some reason I still have at our house. I think Mom and Dad had them in their house, and then they were tired of carrying them around, so they gave them to me, and I still had them. And so I found my internship project binder. And so one of the things as an intern at JCPenney that I got to experience was having my headshot taken, and I think we've got a picture of me from that summer. And your reaction is exactly what happened when I showed this to a staff member who will remain anonymous, who burst out laughing for about the next 5 minutes. So during that summer, there were all sorts of things I had to learn, things I had to do, projects I was a part of, and in a retail environment, it's selling clothing and getting displays set and tracking sales and deciding when to mark things down. So just a couple pictures from this binder that I had found that we had scanned. So the good old St. John's Bay polo shirts at JCPenney. So that display, you could pick one up that day for $14.99. And then the next picture, so from the young men's department, the big style that summer for young men were Jenko jeans. Some of you here are too old, or not too old, but too tasteful to have ever experienced those. Did anyone ever wear a pair of Jenkos? Would anyone admit to that in public? So they're basically the opposite of skinny jeans. Skinny jeans have narrow legs, and Jenko jeans, I think we had a pair that we sold that had not a 32-inch waist, but a 32-inch leg opening at the bottom. So they were really just long culottes. But so Jenko was a big seller for us. You can go to the placeholder slide. We don't need to look at Jenkos anymore. But actually, what sticks with me from that summer, more than anything else, was a different item of apparel, a different piece of attire. And it wasn't one that we sold at JCPenney. It was a WWJD bracelet. And it was worn by my internship supervisor, my manager, Dean Rademacher. I remember coming into work one day and seeing this new bracelet that he was wearing. It had WWJD, and I didn't know what those letters stood for. This was 1997. This was breaking news back then. And so, Dean then explained to me that WWJD, it stands for What Would Jesus Do? And then he went to talk about how he had received the bracelet as I think it was as a part of his church, and then it said that because he had gotten the bracelet, and whenever someone was asked about the bracelet, then what you do with it is to give it away. And so he took that and gave it to me. And that was the most significant piece of apparel and attire that I encountered that summer. Dean, as my supervisor, as my manager, I knew he was a faithful churchgoer, very active in his Catholic church, being on their council. He cared a lot, and we did a lot of this is what Catholics do, this is what Lutherans do. We kind of have a lot in common. We kind of do some things differently. And this is before I experienced my call to go to seminary, but I was a church kid growing up, so we talked church. And but what I was most impressed by throughout the summer was just how down to earth, how exceedingly faithful, and how completely normal Dean was as a man of faith. So for me as a young man, to have someone model and live out such a faithful life was really important to me. I remember one day we were invited out to lunch at the Applebee's at Brookdale by one of the sales reps. And one of the things that Dean said is, the sales rep is going to try to pick up our lunch. And Dean just said, I always pay for my own lunch, so then I don't feel like I'm beholden to them or I owe them any favors. You can make your own decision, but I'm not going to have the sales rep buy my lunch. And so that impressed me as an ethical act to say he had clear boundaries as to how he was engaging people, could have taken advantage of it, but instead, this is a sign of him living out his faith. And just seeing that sense of what a grounded, active follower of Jesus and church member, to see what that looked like in someone out in the real world, to me was just really encouraging. It's something that's stuck with me for these last 21 years and will stick with me for the rest of my life as well. So we're getting ready for the series, and I knew that, March 14th was the day I had it. So I wonder what Dean's up to. I got done with my internship, and it was actually during that summer, later in the summer, I experienced my call into ministry, and so I didn't pursue a career with JCPenney, and so our paths didn't cross. And so I wondered, I wonder what Dean's up to these days. So I threw his name in the old Google machine, and just to see, maybe I can track him down. And so, a Facebook thing comes up first, but then what was fascinating is the second or third link. So I don't know if you've never Googled yourself, give it a try. It's kind of fun to see what shows up. But the second or third link was to a Catholic church. I was like, well, that's interesting. There's a Dean Rademacher that works at this church. And I looked, and there's a church called St. Joe's. Okay, St. Joe's, and it's St. Joe's of New Hope in Plymouth. Well, I know towns called New Hope in Plymouth. And so I clicked on the link and found, all of a sudden the picture pops up, and here's Dean Rademacher, who serves as the parish administrator at the St. Joe's Catholic Parish of New Hope in Plymouth. And so, wow. Well, now I know what he's doing. So he had his email on the website. So I'm just going to send Dean an email to say, hey, I'm going to be talking about you, but also I want to thank you for being a person who encouraged me in my faith. And but do you remember me? I was that young guy who had a Simpsons obsession, and you had to put up with in doing these internship projects. So I sent him this email and just wondering, if he'd get it and remember me or whatever. It turns out he received the email on his phone turned to the person next to him, and it happened to be Heidi Hustoft, our executive director of finance, because the two of them were sitting next together at a church administrators conference. So I think the Holy Spirit, Dean, has led you here today. So I want to invite you to come on up, Dean, and let's welcome Dean for. So you remembered me. I don't want to rehash the whole summer because I don't know what stories. You're good.
This is on.
It is on. It is on.
I remember Joel right away. I loved having interns. I actually had, of course, in my career at JCPenney's, probably 9 interns and 10 trainees. And I always enjoyed the discussion. And I always looked at the internship as, it's your chance to check out JCPenney's in this case. It's our chance to check you out. And it wasn't, oftentimes I came to the end of an internship with someone and they'd say, not kind of my gig. Not really what I want to do. It's not what I feel I want to do. And I'd be like, successful internship. You figured it out. And you're exploring. And that's good. So you tried this, now you're going to try something else. I will say, he really thought that Bart Simpson was the best cartoon show, everything. And I was like, best ever? No.
I was 21, man. Give me a break.
I feel like there's a picture of you in Jenko jeans somewhere that you didn't share. That's my one thing.
The internship binder is under lock and key now. So
because I just feel like you might have
tried it out.
Well, I think you tried on one leg.
Or just tried on one.
To
just
point
pull
out
up the one leg and
that one leg you could fit in.
Yeah.
I want to say that happened.
It may have. It may have.
No.
So what was fascinating, though, and so Dean and I reconnected and had lunch together, and then what was fascinating, what I was hoping that you could share with us, is your journey, because you have a fascinating call story from our time together, but how that's unfolded for you to your current sense of call and your ministry at our neighbors at St. Joe's.
Yeah. So in 1997, so it's 21 years ago, I was at JCPenney's at Brookdale, and I drive by that every day because I come down 100 to 36th. And about 3 years later, I applied to be a parish administrator at a church, and I came up second. I was runner-up to a person who used to be a priest, and they felt he knew more about the church than I did. So I came up second, and then I thought, gave it a shot. Okay. Then about 3 years ago, I had my ACL replaced. And 10 days later, I had a massive pulmonary embolism. So my lungs were blocked about 80%. I say it's like just a little setback. My wife was there, and she tells me and everything that the emergency room told us. But during that, then I started spiritual direction because I had this recovery of the knee and that. So I did spiritual direction with a wonderful sister up at St. Ben's. And as I was doing spiritual direction, I kept, usually sometimes when you talk to God or you're praying, you're kind of like, if you do this, I'll give you that. Or I did watch his homily about transactional God and the buying the Matchbox cars. I saw that from your recent homily, which was good. Still have the mentor role here. But I went through all that, and then I discerned, and then I would do different forms of prayer. I practice something called Lectio, which is where you pray a very small passage, and then you reflect on it. I love group Lectio, which I did a lot during that time, where you go and then a group of you pray it, then you reflect and you say, I heard. What from this is speaking to me? Then you do it again. You might have promptings from the person leading it that might say, God's love is everlasting. When is the last time I showed that? Those kinds of questions. And then third is you rest with that phrase, or it's usually less than a paragraph. And then you just listen to God. You say, what is it I'm not? I'm at peace? Am I listening? And that got me to the point of, you know what, I really enjoyed working in the church. I've done many things, parish council, school board, all those things. So then I was discerning becoming a parish administrator again. And I was just about recovered. And then JCPenney's, which if you follow JCPenney's, has had a few, mostly downs. I mean, we went through 4 CEOs in 5 years. That's not much. Imagine changing pastors every year. But at that point, as I was discerning that, and I'd even done prayer, and I'd also done, Myers-Briggs and all those things that tells you what you could be when you grow up, an opportunity came, and they said, we're offering all management leadership a buyout. A week of pay for every year plus your vacation, so 30 weeks of pay. And I just thought, you know what, it's time for me to do what I want to do. And there's your first half of life. I turned 50 this year, where you kind of worry about your career and, all that. And then there's your second half of life where you go, what is it I stand for? What do I want to be a part of? So I didn't learn as quickly as Joel. It took me longer. 21, anyway, a few more years longer. And that's what I found with a number of people as they discern. I'm now a mentor to other people who are becoming parish administrators, which is a whole nother story, because you got to deal with the pastor and such. So that's a little different. But no, that's my story. But I totally remember the bracelet. It was something that it was huge. Everyone was wearing them. And I thought it was just wonderful, the whole pass it on.
Yep.
That was the part that I really loved. I can't tell you how many of those I bought and then passed it on.
Yep. And that was, for me, it was a great witness that you provided, and then just seeing how you would live out your faith in those daily ways. And one of the interesting things that I picked up on when we were talking the other day at lunch, that you identify, in the Catholic tradition as a Benedictine. And we're not as familiar with that. So maybe you could give us the brief sketch of what,
sure, I'll give you the thumbnail.
What that is, the thumbnail.
So I'm a Benedictine Oblate. So that means, you probably know where St. John's is, up by St. Cloud. I've taken a vow to that monastery. As a husband of 25 years, as a father of 2, but I follow the teachings of that monastery, which the first teaching is to welcome each person as Christ. I try to remember that with my staff sometimes when they come in my door. But, that's sometimes interesting. But what's been really wonderful is the Benedictine, the monks and the fathers up there, it's totally ecumenical. Benedictine oblates are from every Christian faith. So when I go on our retreats in the summer, I shared this with Joel, but one time we sat there and there's 6 of us around the table, and I've got a Lutheran pastor, a Methodist pastor, my friend who's Pentecostal, a Catholic priest who actually flies up from New York, but he's taken his vow to St. John's, and he comes out. And it was just interesting as we're talking about what we share, same thing Joel and I did, and the differences. Like in the one case, not to put Joel on the spot, the Lutheran pastor is like, I don't have the authority that you have, and he points to the Catholic priest. And the Catholic priest is, yeah, but they think I can fix everything because I have the authority, but I don't have the money. So, but it's just wonderful. And when we do group Lectio or whatever, I love your worship tonight. It's just wonderful to see. We have so much in common. You send people to feed my starving children, I'm guessing. You do the lock-in, we do the lock-in. We bump into each other, our 2 communities, at many things. Mm-hmm. So I'm focused on that. And that has really supported me. What I love about that vow that I take and I renew every year is it does say, you list all the things and you say, as life permits. I couldn't go last year to the retreat. I had a number of fellow oblates. Why aren't you going? It's my in-laws' 50th anniversary, and we're going to be at a really wonderful bed and breakfast in Duluth, but life didn't permit. And that's what we all deal with, right? We all know we'd like to do this, and things happen, and life doesn't permit. My mom's sick, whatever it is. And that has been a great strength of mine. And yeah, my faith is very important to me, but I'm going to come here for worship sometime, for sure.
Nice.
And I was checking out your space, as Joel can tell you. I was like, how's that work?
Nice.
That's a strategy person to me.
You always said strategy. That was your... But anyway, that idea of welcoming each person as Christ, it's certainly something that even before you took that vow, I experienced you embodying, and just I thank you for being an encouraging person and a brother in Christ, and thank you for coming and sharing with us and letting us get to know you. Thanks so much, Dean.
Thank you.